Discover the incredible journey, from panic in the rain to awakening on a Mafia boss's bed. Drenched and shivering, Sarah staggered into the bar, desperate for refuge from the relentless storm. The rain pounded against her like the suffocating weight of bills she couldn't pay and dreams she couldn't answer. This was no place for a woman like her. The flickering neon lights and smoky air was a far cry from the warmth of the diner where she spent her days waiting tables, sipping lukewarm coffee, and smiling through the exhaustion. But as wind whipped at her back, Sarah felt the heartbeat of the town reflected in that dingy bar, an untamed energy tangling with her frazzled nerves. With a hesitant breath, she approached the bar. Regulars cast sideways glances, their conversations faltering for just a second. Her coursing fear made her feel small and exposed. Just as she turned to escape the scrutiny, her elbow nudged a stack of chips, sending them tumbling across the table where a high-stakes poker game was in full swing. A gasp rippled through the bar, and eyes locked onto her. A dark figure, Vincent Moretti, occupied the head of the table, his icy gaze piercing through the awkward silence she created. Panic raced through her, but as his intrigue bloomed into a hint of amusement, it ignited something within Sarah, a flicker of hope along with her ever-present anxiety. "Pretty bold move," he said, leaning back, his voice like gravel, as the others grumbled and returned to their play. Swallowing her nerves, Sarah began to talk, just casual words meant to ease the heavy atmosphere that clung like the humidity in the air around her. They exchanged a few tentative conversations amid the chaos. As she inadvertently revealed bits of herself, the worry for Lily, the unrelenting grind to survive, a whisper of dreams long abandoned, she saw something shift in Vincent's expression. A vulnerability echoed within his hardened demeanor, an invitation to dig deeper beyond the mobster facade he wore like armor. Yet, with every tentative smile he offered, the onslaught of emotion that danced within her turned jagged. Could she trust him? His life was riddled with danger, and with it, so many uncertainties that could unravel her world. The stakes were impossibly high. If one wrong move were taken, everything she held dear could spiral into chaos. As Vincent leaned closer, concern etched in his features, the thought of Lily's safety tightened the pit in her stomach. Each heartbeat drummed a heavy rhythm, a countdown to a choice she wasn't prepared to make. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The tension thickened, twisting her insides like vines of uncertainty. She was teetering on the precipice of a dangerous game, caught in the gravity of Vincent's enigmatic charm. Here was a man who carried the weight of power and peril, a man who could either uplift her from the muck of her life or pull her deeper into a world of shadows. Just at that moment, a shattering crash echoed through the bar. Trouble entered, furious and loud, a rival gang on the hunt. With her heart racing, Sarah glanced toward Vincent, whose posture shifted, radiating danger. Choices loomed in the pulse of chaos swirling around her. Would she dive headfirst into this tumultuous life for a chance at change, or would she cling to the right side of safety, away from the fire? As the door swung open wide, another threat barged in, sending waves of anxiety crashing through her. In that moment, as she locked eyes with Vincent, caught between deep-rooted fear and a flicker of burgeoning hope, she grasped the volatile truth: nothing would ever be the same again. The bar erupted into chaos as shouting and the clatter of chairs echoed against the walls, shattering the fragile moments Sarah had shared with Vincent. Instinctively, she stepped closer to him, her body seeking refuge in the midst of mayhem. The scent of leather and danger wafted around her, overcoming the musty odor of spilled drinks and desperation. Vincent's eyes remained locked on the newcomers, calculating and steely. "Get down," he commanded, his voice low but firm. Somehow, the authority in his tone instilled a sense of protection. She hesitated, caught between the need to comply and the nagging fear of what lay ahead, not only for her but for Lily. The image of her daughter's small hand gripping a crumpled drawing flashed through her mind. When the first punch landed, sending a man sprawling to the ground, Sarah realized she was thrusting herself into a world far beyond the limits of her careful existence. Here, broken rules reigned and loyalty was often drenched in blood. For a split second, she felt out of her depth. But strangely, the realization of her choice crystallized. This was a moment that could redefine her. As the brawl intensified, Vincent took swift action, his body moving with a fluidity that was both terrifying and fascinating. He navigated the chaos with a predator-esque grace, subduing a rival with an expert ease. A shiver swept through her, not from fear but from an unanticipated thrill. She was witnessing raw power, an unfamiliar magnetism that pulled her deeper into his orbit. "Stay close," he commanded again, glancing back with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. The bar was no longer a refuge but a battleground, and Sarah sensed a shift within herself. She could either retreat to safety or embrace this chaotic upheaval as a catalyst for the change she had only ever dreamed of. The stakes felt monumental, far more than just her own life. It felt like the potential to create a new narrative for Lily to belong somewhere, albeit in a world fraught with peril. With the chaos erupting in waves around her, Sarah's fear began to morph into determination. Each fierce clash of fists stirred a dormant energy within her, awakening desires she had long neglected. Rather than freezing in terror, she was drawn to the tumult, to the emotions that dictated the pace of this world. Suddenly, Vincent turned back abruptly, sensing her shift. "Are you with me?" he asked, his voice thick with urgency. In that moment, looking into the depths of his icy gaze, Sarah felt a pulse of resolve. This was her chance, no more hiding, no more waiting for life to happen. "I'm with you," she replied, surprising even herself with the steadiness of her voice. The response seemed to infuse Vincent with a new energy. They became a strange pair against the chaos, him, a mobster entwined in shadows, and her, a woman clawing for a light in the dark. Together, they navigated their surroundings with purpose, dodging threats as she shed layers of her timid self, one chaotic moment at a time. However, an unsettled feeling lurked behind her newfound bravado. Could she really sustain this path? Once they broke free from the explosive violence surrounding them, what would it mean to forge a connection with someone like Vincent, who dwelled in a world rife with danger? As the storm subsided outside, a chilling realization sank in. She hadn't just entered a new world, she was now entwined in a dangerous game with high stakes. For the first time, the horizon sparkled with possibilities and terrifying uncertainty. Stepping outside the bar, a flicker of doubt crept back in, teasing her resolve. What about Lily? It whispered. The gravity of her choices loomed larger than ever. Now, nothing felt clear, and then, as they stepped into the rain-soaked streets, a shadow lurked in the distance, a reminder that the dangers of Vincent's world were far from behind them. The time had come to address a new, personal reckoning. The rain poured down around them, a curtain of cold that made the chaos of the bar feel like a fading nightmare. Heart-hammering, Sarah found herself stepping into Vincent's world, feeling both exhilarated and terrified. The streets glistened with puddles reflecting the blurred neon lights of the city, and she was acutely aware of every drop that hit her skin, invigorating her senses. Vincent moved with purpose, glancing over his shoulder, guiding her as if he were the anchor in a stormy sea. She noticed the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw clenched slightly. It was as if he bore the burden of countless choices that had led them into this moment. Her instinct to follow him felt like both an obligation and a radical departure from the safety she clung to for so long. "What now?" she asked, trying to fill the silence that thrummed between them with urgency. It was more than a question about their immediate plans, it was a plea for direction amidst the uncertainty. Vincent halted, his eyes searching hers, and she felt the weight of his gaze. "Now, we get somewhere safe. Then we talk," he said, tone clipped, but she could hear an unspoken promise hidden in the tension. This was not just an escape, it was a new beginning. As they rounded a corner into an alley, something flickered inside her, an understanding that this was a defining moment. She was not merely fleeing the chaos but stepping deeper into the realm of the unknown, a place filled with shadows and unimagined possibilities. A part of her longed for this, to flee her past life, to break from the shackles of mediocrity. Deep within that desire lay a worry: could she truly be someone else? Walking beside Vincent felt almost like wearing a mask. There was an electric thrill in being close to danger, living outside the confines of her predictable world. Each breath she took was laced with the intoxicating scent of risk. "Do you know what you're doing, really?" she pressed, partially to himself as much as for her. "This world, it's dangerous. I have Lily to think about." Vincent's face softened briefly before a flicker of regret crossed his features, replaced by hard determination. "I know. But sometimes, safety is a greater illusion than we recognize. You can hide, but you can't escape what you truly want." The sincerity in his voice struck her. It was a clarity she had desperately yearned for in her own life but had always stifled beneath the weight of responsibility. Could this man, with all his darkness and allure, embody her own hidden strength? As they reached an inconspicuous door behind a nondescript building, he paused, leaning closer. "I need you to trust me, Sarah. This isn't just my life on the line. It's yours too." The stark reality of his words sent a jolt through her. She was not escaping a fight, she was stepping into one. But here, standing on the cusp, the puzzle pieces fell into place. This was a gamble worth taking, a risk born out of courage rather than fear. Heart racing, she nodded, emboldened by a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in ages. The fear could wait, it was the determination that had taken root in her that would guide her now. Inside, the dim light illuminated the tight space cluttered with shadows, and Sarah felt a rush of trepidation mingling with anticipation. She understood this was not just a sanctuary but a strategic foothold in Vincent's domain, a place where she might uncover her own strength. The stakes had never been higher, and she would either rise to the occasion or be consumed by the repercussions of her choices. As he pushed open the door to reveal an enigmatic darkness, she took a deep breath, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. Tonight would become the crucible in which she would forge her new identity. "Are you ready?" he asked, a challenge laced in his words. With a steadying breath, she held his gaze. "Let us do this." But beneath her bravado, a question lingered: what would she truly uncover about herself in this perilous game? The door creaked open wide, revealing not just a room but a crossroads, leading her to ponder. Was she ready for the depths of Vincent's world, or would she find herself drowning in something she couldn't control? The moment they crossed the threshold, the weight of possibility settled heavily on Sarah's shoulders. Fog and shadows enveloped them, but she could feel the steady pulse of life around her, voices muffled, footsteps echoing against the concrete floors. It was a different world, one that thrummed with energy both alluring and intimidating. Vincent led her deeper into the room, the faint glow of fluorescent lights illuminating jars of strange substances and stacks of unmarked crates. Her heart raced, not just from fear but from the intoxicating thrill of it all. This was her chance. Here, she could discover who she might become. "Stay close," he instructed, his voice steady but low, compressing the tension in the air into an electrifying dart. She could sense his protectiveness, yet that also ignited something fierce within her, a determination to carve out her own space in this dangerous puzzle. As they moved further in, Sarah's mind raced ahead. She was aware of her surroundings. The graffiti on the walls spoke stories she yearned to understand, each tag a battle cry from those who thrived in this underbelly of life. Could she belong here? Would she be able to navigate a world that she had only glimpsed through the barriers of her suburban comfort zone? "Vincent, what is the plan?" she asked, urgency threading through her words. This was the moment to establish her place, her role. He revealed a slight smile, but the seriousness in his gaze told her this was no game. "We need to meet with an associate. It's vital for our next step." His tone shifted, a mix of leadership and vulnerability brushed against his features. "You're going to have to show courage." His statement rang loud in her ears. Courage. It suddenly felt monumental, as if it demanded answers she wasn't sure if she possessed. She locked her gaze onto the floor, tracing her thoughts. What did courage mean now? Was it about acting boldly without thought, or was it the quiet strength to face fears head-on? Suddenly, the door swung open, and a figure emerged, a man with a wide stance and an inscrutable expression. His eyes flickered over Sarah, appraising her before settling back on Vincent. "Who is this?" the newcomer demanded, his voice gruff. "Sarah," Vincent replied, his voice calm yet undeniably firm. "She is with me." The stranger didn't waver. "This is no place for her." Stung, Sarah felt her flight instincts kick in, but she quashed them. What right did he have to judge her capabilities? This was her choice, her journey, not his. "I'm here because I want to be," she asserted, stepping forward, surprising even herself. The challenge in her voice cut through the tension, as she grappled with the power of her own declaration. This voice, the one unfiltered by obligations and fears, was one she dauntedly recognized as her own. Vincent turned to her, a flicker of approval flashing across his face. "That's the spirit," he said quietly, much to the surprise of the stranger. The man softened. "All right, but remember, it's not just the streets that are dangerous. Knowledge can be a weapon." The weight of his words settled in. Knowledge was power, but was she prepared to wield it? "You'll learn that quickly," Vincent said, the tension easing slightly as he gestured toward the small group forming around them nearby. "Keep your mind open. Tonight we'll challenge everything." Suddenly, she felt the ground shift beneath her. The stakes were rising with every moment. This was her opportunity, not a mere escape but a challenge to unveil her true self. With each conversation buzzing around her, she felt her resolve hardening. Maybe she was ready to embrace the person she had been afraid to become. As the night unfolded, Sarah took a breath steeped in determination, ready to explore this dark labyrinth of secrets. Each step would be an unveiling, a discovery of hidden strengths. But looming behind the thrill was a larger question: what were the depths of this new world, and would the revelations she sought lead to empowerment, or would she find herself ensnared in a web of darkness? The door to her transformation had swung wide open. Yet as laughter echoed and harsh whispers flew through the air, a shadow lurked at the edge of her awareness, a looming threat that could unravel everything she fought to become. Would she find the strength to navigate the storm, or were the chains of her past about to bind her once more? As the murmurs of the gathering intensified around her, Sarah steered her focus inward. The noise of laughter and hushed whispers swirled like a tempest, but she honed her breath, tapping into the calm center amid the storm. Emotions surged within her, a powerful cocktail of anxiety, exhilaration, and defiance. She turned her attention back to Vincent, who was exchanging rapid-fire words with the man who had first scrutinized her. This new individual had a swarthy demeanor, suggesting that he was no stranger to the streets nor the shadows they cast. Watching them, Sarah felt a surge of longing to contribute, to be seen not just as an outsider but as an active participant. "Why did you want me here, Vincent?" she asked, narrowing her eyes at the confident exchanges flying overhead. "What do you really think I can do?" He paused, glancing toward her. "Your perspective. You see things differently, and that is valuable. You're not part of this world yet, and that gives you an edge." His words ignited something primal in her, a desire to rise above the self-imposed limits she had always known, yet that light was shadowed by new uncertainties. Could she truly bring her fresh perspective to this underbelly, or would her inexperience prove costly? No one else would answer these questions for her. With each new face surrounding her, each voice tinged with excitement or fear, the gravity of her situation intensified. They were all involved in something that transcended mere survival. Their conversations were thick with plans, secrets, and uncharted territories. It was exhilarating and terrifying. "Are you ready to step into this?" Vincent asked, looking straight at her. His gaze bore the weight of expectation, and it crashed against her like a wave. This was at the pivotal moment where she could choose to dive in or retreat back to her old life. Taking a deep breath, she forced herself to confront her instinct to shy away. "I don't know what to expect," she confessed, the honesty in her voice surprising her. "But if I'm here, I want to learn." "Good," he replied with a nod of approval. There might be tests tonight. Every step will demand your focus. As they stepped deeper into the thrumming heart of the gathering, the atmosphere shifted. The strains of music intermingled with the close proximity of strangers, creating an almost intimate energy. Curiosity propelled her forward, and she sought to absorb every detail: the flickers of light reflected off glass, the rhythmic movement of bodies dancing, and the weight of darkness that lurked in the corners. "What do I need to do?" she asked, trying to reclaim her initiative. "Follow my lead. Listen carefully. This world operates in layers. Learn to perceive the unseen dangers," Vincent instructed, the confidence in his demeanor infusing her with courage. A realization struck her: every whispered secret and pointed conversation could be a stepping stone toward discovering her own capabilities, not just as a participant but as a leader. With each encounter, as fragments of a plan began to coalesce, she felt her confidence solidifying, her voice growing steadier. Her past fears of inadequacy unraveled with every question she asked, every observation she made. As Vincent introduced her to various members of the underground, Sarah felt herself shedding the restraints of her previous life. She was no longer just Sarah from the suburb, she was a burgeoning presence, craving acceptance and understanding in a world that thrived in uncertainty. But as she ventured further into the depths of this chaotic realm, the atmosphere began to darken with tension. Someone's gaze lingered on her longer than comfort allowed, palpable malice threading through the laughter around them. It was a stark reminder that knowledge was indeed a weapon, but so were her instincts. Would she be able to decipher the language of this new existence quickly enough to protect herself? Could she transform her growing awareness into survival, or would her naivety invite danger she wasn't prepared to face? With the weight of anticipation hanging in the air, Sarah steeled herself for the challenges ahead. The night had just begun, and within its chaotic embrace lay hidden opportunities and unexpected threats. As voices rose and shadows deepened, the question became not only whether she could navigate this labyrinth but whether she could thrive under its hidden dangers. What awaited her, beyond the doorway of potential, could either illuminate her path or plunge her into darkness. The tension thickened, and she could almost hear the echo of her own heart pulsing, longing, and questioning what her next move would be. The weight of the stairs intensified as Sarah navigated her way through the throng, every laugh and whisper ricocheting off the walls of her mind. It was a strange dichotomy. This world of noise felt both foreign and exhilarating, igniting her senses in ways she never knew possible. She stole glances at Vincent, his confidence cutting through the chaos like a beacon. She reminded herself she was here to learn, to grow, yet those thoughts were engulfed by creeping doubt. "Sarah," Vincent called, pulling her back from her reverie. "Focus on the conversation. You need to understand what's at stake here." His calm demeanor seemed to pierce the tangle of her thoughts, compelling her to be present. She took a steadying breath, pushing aside the fear clouding her judgment. The space pulsed with energy, and Sarah turned her attention to the circle of people gathered nearby. They were discussing a shipment, coded language she struggled to decipher. Each term harmonized with the rapid beat of the music, covering a layered meaning she could only grasp at the edges. "What's the connection?" she asked, attempting to break through her inexperience. It felt risky, challenging preconceived notions she had about herself. The group paused and turned their eyes toward her, noting the brave boldness in her question. Vincent nodded approvingly. "Good question. In this world, alliances dictate survival. Know who your friends are and, more importantly, who your enemies might be." She felt a rush of determination. Each observation sharpened her resolve. She was gathering pieces of insight, slowly constructing the puzzle of this complex reality. Her analytical mind, once a source of discomfort, began to emerge as her strength. But amid the glimmers of potential, she caught the lingering gaze of the man who had scrutinized her. It was a reminder of her precarious position. She didn't fully understand these alliances, nor the risks inherent in daring to engage. Yet the courage rising within her urged her to confront those uncertainties head-on. "I want to be part of the solution," she declared, surprising herself with the clarity of her conviction. "I don't want to be just another body in this gathering." Vincent smiled, the expression laden with encouragement. "Declare what you see," but always question what you don't. You'll learn as you go. A conversation unfolded, and Sarah leaned into it, allowing herself to be swept along. As time progressed, she began to recognize the hidden competencies within her, a blend of curiosity and tenacity that helped her weave into the intricate tapestry of connections forming around her. Yet the atmosphere thickened again, the previous edginess around the man's gaze returned, now imbued with a sense of danger. A feeling churned in her gut, and she couldn't shake the ominous presence creating tension. The laughter grew louder, masking the whispers that traveled through the crowd. As the group began discussing the specifics of the shipment, Sarah's intuition screamed at her to remain vigilant. She noted the hesitations in their rhythm, their slight glances toward the corner where that man stood. The deeper she delved, the more she understood the weight of her observations, and how crucial each piece of information would be in the coming hours. "Stay close to me," Vincent whispered, urgency etching his voice. He beckoned her nearer, and she followed instinctively, yet part of her longed to understand the reasons behind his caution. A surge of adrenaline coursed through her veins. What if she were to confront the man, to demand his intentions? What if that fear transformed into a calculated risk? The moment presented a quandary: could she engage and unveil the hidden layers of this world, or was she masking her own vulnerability with bravado? Her thoughts raced as she contemplated her options. She was at a crossroads. Would she retreat or dive deeper into the complexities unfolding around her? The stakes were high, and only she could decide how her journey would unfold. As the tension tightened, the next move hung in the air like a taut bowstring, waiting to be released. Sarah had only begun to realize the power of her perspective, but the question remained: was she ready to wield it in the face of formidable opposition? In that moment, the pursuit of her empowerment became inseparable from the reality of the danger lurking in the shadows. Would she seize the opportunity to redefine herself, or would her fears snuff out that flicker of aspiration? Sarah's heart raced as she weighed her instinct to retreat against the urge to engage. The energy in the room pulsed like a living entity, electric and alive. It begged her to act, but the threatening gaze of the man made her hesitate. She searched for the strength to confront her fears, yet doubt gnawed at her resolve. How could she be part of this intricate world if she remained a shadow, forever watching from the sidelines? "Let us position ourselves by the bar," Vincent suggested, his voice low as he guided her through the throng. "It'll give us a better vantage point. You need to observe, analyze." He squeezed her shoulder reassuringly. They settled at the bar, an island in the swirling tide of bodies, and Sarah's analytical mind took over. She watched the dynamics unfold, the exchanges laced with unspoken tension, the way people leaned in closer when discussing sensitive topics. Understanding was blossoming inside her, forcing her to confront the notion that she belonged here more than just an observer. Barely controlling the urge to find the man, his lurking presence a dark shadow in her mind, she focused on Vincent's words. "Every individual has something to offer, but leverage requires insight. What information can you collect today?" As they listened, she noted the names of the parties involved, the locations mentioned, and crucially, the hesitations, the words left unsaid. Secrets hung in the air like fog, dense and obscuring, but she began to piece them together. Suddenly, the unfamiliar world illuminated her with inspiration. There were cracks in the facade, spaces where she could insert her growing understanding. "Look at his posture," Vincent said, nudging her with his elbow. "That's Giroux. He holds a significant position, but his apprehension suggests he is facing pressure from somewhere or someone. Who do you think that could be?" The mention of names and ties issued a challenge she couldn't ignore. "What if it's connected to the shipment?" she proposed, the words tumbling from her lips before she could second-guess herself. The realization surged through her: she could contribute, even with the limited knowledge she had. Vincent turned to her with admiration gleaming in his eyes, the encouragement she craved. "Exactly, Sarah. Trust your instincts. Dig deeper. What could that mean for the others?" Her thoughts started to crystallize into a plan. If Giroux was under pressure, perhaps she could glean information by following up on that angle. The air thickened around them as intention turned into action. I want to find out who's applying this pressure on him, she said firmly, determination igniting fire in her spirit. Just be cautious, Vincent advised. There's more at stake than you realize. The conviction in his tone brought her back to reality, the understanding that here, in this world, innocence could quickly become a liability. Was she ready to embrace this risk? The potential for growth fueled her courage, yet the question still loomed larger than life. Before she could process her next move, the man who had been watching her stepped closer, his demeanor unreadable. Time seemed to stretch as he approached, the crowd around them merging into a blur. This was the face of her fears made flesh, the embodiment of doubt and intimidation, but now it sparked a fierce, bubbling curiosity within her. Sarah, the man's voice was smooth, almost charismatic, yet filled with an unyielding edge. We need to talk. How had he known her name? The rush of adrenaline shot again through her veins, a mixture of terror and excitement. Her heart beat wildly, yet it was a different kind of fear this time, a challenge waiting to unfold. Will you confront him? A whisper echoed within her thoughts. Or will you let fear dictate your path? As she stood frozen between choice and consequence, she felt the weight of her journey bearing down on her. This was the moment she had prepared for, the confrontation she had sought. Would she step into her own narrative, or would she shrink back into the shadows? The tension was palpable, and Sarah took a deep breath, ready to find her voice. The path ahead sharpened, and within her, the recognition of her own capability dawned. But would she navigate this treacherous junction successfully, or would the man's next words unravel everything she had begun to discover? The man's piercing gaze intensified, locking onto Sarah's like a predator sizing up its prey. She felt an urgency stirring within her, a primal instinct to either flee or stand firm. What game was he playing? Why do you want to talk to me? She managed, her voice steadier than she felt. The question held a blend of challenge and curiosity, a calculated strategy not to make it easy for him. It was a tentative step into the confrontational territory she had only dared to visualize. That he smirked, confidence radiating from him. You've been watching and learning, haven't you? Impressive for someone so fresh. His choice of words hung in the air, heavy with implications that sank into her gut. Fresh meaning inexperienced, naive. But she wasn't here to be labeled. If we're talking about leverage, what makes you think I'd be interested in yours? The man's expression faltered slightly, surprise flickering in his eyes. It was fleeting, but enough for Sarah to sense that she had struck a chord. Maybe there was more to her than what she presented, a potential she had yet to fully grasp. Listen carefully, Sarah, he said, his tone smoothing out into a silkier menace. You're surrounded by individuals who thrive on power. Giroux is just the tip of the iceberg. You could be a player or just remain another pawn. What do you choose? His words penetrated her defenses, pouring doubt into her mind. Did she want to immerse herself in this potentially treacherous world or maintain the safety of her current existence? As she grappled with that question, Vincent's encouragement replayed in her mind, a reminder of the strength she was beginning to find within herself. Am I a player yet? She questioned, the resolve tightening in her chest. Because right now, I seem to be just a name you're tossing around. He stepped closer, invading her personal space, the tension shifting like the air before a storm. You have something to offer. Intelligence. But you need the right alliances. I can help you with that. Together, we could ensure Giroux never sees the light of another day. The dark prospect sent a shiver down her spine. She had always been a person who valued integrity, loyalty and honesty were her guiding stars. The words together and ensuring painted a picture that repulsed yet fascinated her. She could flip the script. This was a fork in the road, not merely a choice for her career, but a defining moment for her character. I play to win. But give me one good reason to trust you. The pulse of her heart thrummed with the defiance she had adopted, ready to taste the freedom from submission. She was learning to use her voice, and every demand fortified her evolving confidence. He studied her, a mixture of intrigue and calculation reflecting in his gaze. Trust is a luxury one you might have to afford if you want insight into the shadows of this game. Let me show you what power looks like when wielded properly. The man's proposition wasn't just an invitation, it was a legal tender for her soul. Did she want to delve deeper, risking everything she stood for, or maintain her stance, adrift in the fringes of ambition? For the first time, doubt turned into fuel, adrenaline poured through her veins, sizzling with possibilities. She could forge an identity here, one that held weight and substance. But at what cost? The stakes felt impossibly high. "I'll think about it," she replied, a slight tremor betraying her resolve even as it hardened. She turned away, feeling a primal instinct surge within her, a mix of fear and fierce determination. Vincent's eyes searched hers as she rejoined him, concern etching lines across his face. "Are you sure?" he whispered, intuition reading the currents flowing in the air. "I have to figure out who I want to be in this world before I commit," she reasoned, a clarion call in her thoughts. Every decision now felt electric, interwoven with potential paths of risk and revelation. As they pulled away from the confrontation, Sarah felt the world expand around her. She was standing at the edge of something vast, titanic. Was she willing to harness the chaos swirling about her like a tempest? The unfolding possibilities teased her imagination, crackling with ominous delight. But deep down, something niggled at her conscience, raising the question: once she crossed that line, would she return unscathed, or would she lose herself in the very shadows she sought to conquer? Each step reproduced the tension, an echo of the personal drama raging inside her. When would she confront her fears head-on? The time was drawing near, and her mouth dried with both excitement and anxiety. What awaited her on the path now lay cloaked in a haze of uncertainty, a duality of power and peril. Would she take that plunge into the darkness, or would she forge a new way, dimming the shadows with her light? She couldn't shake off the feeling that the moment she agreed to his terms, she would step into a life weighted with shadows. Damnation or salvation, those were the options she grappled with as she navigated the bustling streets back to her apartment, each step resonating with a heavy thump of uncertainty, drowning her thoughts in the mundane routines of washing dishes and organizing her workspace. She felt the insistent whispers of doubt conversing in her mind. Vincent's face swam before her, his unwavering support a contrast to the uncertainty threatening to drown her. He had released her from the grip of self-doubt, but could he guide her when confronted by forces that promised darkness? She took a breath, pushing her hair behind her ear as she skimmed through the notes from the clandestine meetings she had attended. An astute observer might recognize the signs of a burgeoning strategist in her, even as not a whisper of confidence flowed there yet. Each page was a step closer to unraveling the mystery that surrounded Giroux, the puppet master she now sought to understand. In the back of her mind, Vincent was an anchor, yet there was no safety in his presence. The man who had walked the knife edge of ambition and morality, could he truly defend her from the danger threatening to bind her? If she were to follow the path laid out by that enigmatic man, she needed to delve deeper, learn about the dark arts she had been both drawn to and repulsed by. Once home, she sought answers online, her fingers dancing across the keyboard as she researched Giroux's associates. Each link painted a darker picture, a web of deceit stretching farther than she had anticipated. It fed her hunger for knowledge but imbued her with trepidation. Would knowledge shield her or simply expose the raw nerve of her ambition? Hours passed in a flurry of tips and techniques, enabling her to piece together more intel. The realization hit her she had the ability to manipulate circumstances. Intelligence had always been her weapon. Perhaps she could be the player. But the cost remained a haunting specter, nudging her every time she imagined herself standing face to face with Giroux. As the night wore on, Sarah paced the small confines of her living room, the clock ticking steadily toward midnight. Her heart raced with decision-making anxiety, weighing the promise of power against the integrity forged through years of commitment. This time, amid the chaos of her thoughts, a fire ignited within her. She didn't need to be drawn into the shadows, she could stand her ground and redefine the rules of engagement. What if she could pivot from being a mere pawn to an unexpected contender? Embracing the fierce energy swirling within her, she understood that insecurity could become a catalyst for transformation. Every ounce of burgeoning strength became a part of her identity, an identity she needed to unveil. That's it, she whispered to herself, a glimmer of resolve sharpening her thoughts. She needed to confront both Giroux and her own fears directly. A plan began to crystallize in her mind, meticulously plotting her approach. What if she reached out to that man? She could engage with his underworld reputation while remaining a step removed, a fellow enigma immersed in the game of power. The thought sent a jolt of excitement coursing through her. Perhaps she could turn the tables and make the shadows dance to her rhythm instead of the other way around. Control and understanding of the lurking dangers would become her shield, guiding her as she navigated treacherous waters while holding on to her morals. On the brink of a newfound quest, Sarah felt the mounting pressure morph into something exhilarating. The weight of her decision felt more like possibility than danger. She put pen to paper, working on her scheme, feeling the horizon of her potential expand further. She wasn't merely reacting, she had begun to craft her narrative. Resolved to confront Giroux, to reclaim her power and test the mettle of her evolving self, she could feel the next chapter of her life unfolding. With promise. It became a bridge to take her into the firmament of the unknown, a place where she could wield the kind of influence she'd only glimpsed until now. But as excitement mingled with dread, one question gripped her: what would Giroux's response be when faced with an opponent who wasn't afraid to play the game? Would he view her as a threat, or could it lead her deeper into a world far darker than she imagined? The next day would prove to be pivotal, as destiny waited at the door, knocking with the promise of an inevitable confrontation. Would she step forward and claim the role of a player, or would the shadows swallow her whole in their grasp? The sun broke through the clouds, bathing the city in a warm glow that felt like a promise, a stark contrast to the darkness she had bravely navigated through. Sarah stood at the threshold of her apartment, her heart steadying with the resolve that had settled over her like a mantle. This was no longer the timid woman who had stumbled into a bar seeking refuge. She was now a woman shaped by chaos, tempered by fear, and empowered by the choices she had made in the shadows. The night before had been a revelation. She had confronted Giroux, holding her ground as she communicated her intent to seize her place in this new realm. That conversation had transformed her in unexpected ways. "You want in? Show me you can survive this game," Giroux had challenged, his eyes narrowing with skepticism. But in that moment, she had felt a surge of clarity and determination. She was ready to embrace the risks that came with knowledge and power. Turning the lines of vulnerability into strategies had uncurled a fire within her. She was no longer lurking in the periphery, but stepping boldly into the arena. As she prepped her strategy for the day, a tingle of adrenaline coursed through her veins. The stakes were high, and she understood that knowledge was her weapon, but more than that, her perspective was her shield. She had gathered intelligence on Giroux and his operations, piecing together patterns, weaknesses, and emerging opportunities that might allow her to manipulate the situation to her advantage. She took a moment to look at the framed photo of Lily on her desk, a reminder of what truly mattered. The weight of that responsibility galvanized her. Every decision she made now was not just about survival, it was about paving a better path for her daughter. This risk was about more than herself. She could rewrite their narrative together, not embroiled in fear, but thriving amid uncertainty. Today would be different. She would meet Vincent, and the meeting promised a shift in dynamics, not only in their relationship but in her own understanding of her worth in this unpredictable world. When she opened the door and stepped into the sunlit street, she felt a sense of clarity blending with determination. Each footfall resonated with newfound confidence. As she approached the meeting point, an almost electric excitement wove its way through her. Vincent was leaning against his car, a mixture of relief and admiration flooding his features when he spotted her. "You look ready," he said, a hint of a smile gracing his lips. "Ready to claim my space," she responded, her voice steady. "I've decided to confront Giroux." His eyebrows shot up in surprise, but quickly smoothed into a proud nod. "That's the spirit. But remember, it's not just about confrontation, it's about strategy. The shadows can be navigated if you understand them." She felt his supportive energy wash over her, inspiring her to push forward into uncharted territory. With him by her side, she realized she had built not just an ally, but a bond forged through trials and shared ambition. In that moment, a visceral sense of empowerment crystallized within her. She wasn't just a pawn in this game, she was learning the art of strategy and manipulation, uncovering secrets and engaging in a dance of perception and influence. As they drove toward Giroux's territory, she mentally mapped out her strategy, cutting through the noise of anxiety that once overwhelmed her. This time, she stood firm in her choices to challenge, to connect, to ascend. With Vincent as her ally, she could weave her newfound skills into a plan that would not only elevate her position but ensure Lily's safety as well. With each passing moment, Sarah was no longer merely an outsider. It was as if she had finally found her place in this chaos. As they approached the heart of Giroux's operations, she realized she had conquered her fears. She had transformed her panic into purpose, and her uncertainties into determination. It was no longer a question of merely surviving, it was about thriving in a world where she could make her mark. Today marked her evolution, as she prepared to step into a confrontation that would define who she was and who she would become. When she finally entered Giroux's domain, she felt the weight of anticipation settle in. It wasn't just a meeting, it was a declaration of her newfound identity. With her goals set firmly in sight, Sarah stood tall, a beacon of resolve and ambition. This journey had begun with chaos, but she had transformed that turmoil into the platform for her evolution. As she prepared for the inevitable clash with Giroux, she felt a fierce pride swell inside her. She had conquered her fears. The shadows no longer defined her, they illuminated the path she would forge for herself and for Lily. The time had come for her voice to resonate loudly, crafting the future she had fought so hard to seize. No longer a specter of uncertainty, Sarah had become a player in her own right. Now was the time for action. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, it truly makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support means everything in overcoming personal struggles together.